Hi, Stephen. Welcome. It's very nice to meet you, and thank you very much for joining me. How are you?
I'm great, Joe. How are you, sir? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing well. Thank you again, and thanks for being here.
Yes.
Stephen, before we jump in, can you tell me a bit about yourself? How you discovered carnivore? How did it all start for you?
Sure. I'm 52 years old. I started carnivore about 3.5 years ago, but I'd say my health journey started probably about 30-ish years ago when I kind of started noticing members of my family were all dying from cancer and heart disease, and it kind of bothered me. I was like, "What's going on with my family?" And I didn't know anything about anything back then, but I still had this sense that you know, like like they say that genetics loads the gun and your lifestyle fires it, and I didn't know that saying back then, but I always had that sense that you don't just get these things by accident. So in particularly my grandmother on my dad's side got a really nasty case of cancer, which ended up finishing her off in stomach cancer, and it was a really, really terrible way for her to die, both for her and for her family. My dad, his sisters were there at her side when she passed, and it was a very ugly death. Just to be blunt about it, I mean, it was a terrible way to go, and they were traumatized. So I always had this sense that I didn't want to die like that. And then once I had a family, I didn't want to ever have to do that to my family. Like, they were just absolutely horrified by what they witnessed, and like they had this idea that death was this spiritual return to the Lord, kind of thing. And that was not her. That was not her death. That was not her experience. It was really terrible. So I just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to experience it. I didn't want to put that burden on my family. So it took me a long time uh, for me to start putting that whole thing into actual movement. I started learning a few things here and there, but I didn't actually put it into movement. And then, of course, like once you enter the health galaxy, I would call it, like you're way out in the arms and everything, and all the information is this total bull, total nonsense. They're like, drink almond milk and eat plant-based burgers and use agave nectar, and then like trying to find healthier versions of sugar and everything. And you're just like, oh, okay, I'll do this and I'll do this, and nothing ever gets better. And then you start like just figuring out things and start like slowly restricting, slowly coming back to the solar system, and then to the center of the sun, where you realize, okay, everything pretty much has to go except for your species appropriate diet if you want to live optimally. So I was keto. I started keto at about 43 or so, after being paleo for about 5 years. And keto was going really well for me. I was really super optimal, healthy, feeling amazing. But there were some underlying things going on with me that I didn't realize were diet related. Like they say that, like arthritis and joint pain or just wear and tear on your body. You're just getting old, so it's just something that you have to live with. I had really bad shoulder impingements. I used to sleep like a rotisserie chicken, just because every couple hours my shoulder would get achy, and I'd have to lay on the other shoulder for a couple hours till I got achy, and then I had to switch again all night, every night for years. It's really terrible. I was just thought that was the way it was. And then I had, golfer and tennis elbow in both my arms, and I just thought that was just normal wear and tear. And then I got into bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding, as a brief stint for about a year and a half. But so I was entering bodybuilding as a keto bodybuilder, and deep into contest prep, I had titrated my food intake so low that all right, I'm going to get rid of the plants for a while and just eat protein and fats. And within probably 2 weeks of doing that, the shoulder impingements were totally gone. Not only could I sleep comfortably, but I was able to start pressing weights that I hadn't been able to press in a long time, just because it was just too painful, and it just wasn't worth it. I was doing like high intensity, lower weight, higher rep workouts, like EMOM workouts, just to build muscle without having to push a lot of weight. And then suddenly I was able to push weight, and I was able to sleep good. My shoulder impingements were gone. I was like, no way. Because I had always heard that plants had their defense chemicals and everything, their defense anti-nutrients, and they want to, but I'm like, whatever. I mean, like the body can handle those sorts of things. Your body heals and everything. And they say the dose is the poison, but when you're eating leafy green and cruciferous vegetables every single day over months and months and months and years and years and years, you never stop dosing yourself with the poison. So that's when it becomes a problem, and it happens over years. And so as soon as I cut out the plants, I immediately felt better in my shoulders. And then within 6 to 8 weeks, the inflammation in my elbows were gone too. So I was like, no way. And then, like the simplicity of it and the ease of it and the cost of it, just really, I'm not spending money on plants, and it takes me 10 minutes to make my dinner. And I was like, this is so simple and easy and cheap relatively, because you're not snacking, you're not grazing. One meal keeps you satiated for hours and hours and hours. You're not eating 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. And I was like, why would I want to go back to that for? So, I was hooked. So that was back in February of 23. And I've been carnivore ever since, pretty strict. I'm never going back.
That's pretty awesome, and actually very interesting. I feel like I relate to a lot of the cases you mentioned. I think with me, like sleep apnea and also the tennis elbow, I've had those, specifically those two. And how long were you struggling with the sleep apnea for? Was it like years or months?
I think it was probably years, and I didn't realize. See, I believe if I'm saying this correctly, because I didn't do a deep dive into it, but I believe there's two types of sleep apnea. There's obstructive sleep apnea, which is typical in like overweight people, where their tongue will obstruct their airway. That's where you get like snores. People who snore really loud. Like if you're ever in a house with somebody who snores really loud, like my dad used to be, he would snore really loud and then stop breathing. It would just stop, and then some point, not too long into the future, but he would start he would breathe suddenly and abruptly and start snoring again for a while. And that was how he slept. I think I had something more like something called central sleep apnea, where something's going on in your mind your brain is not telling your lungs to breathe when you're sleeping. So it would be like right when I was starting to fall asleep at night, I was just starting to fall into that sleep, and then I'd stop breathing. And then the lack of oxygen would abruptly wake me up. And because I was not fully aware, not fully consciousness, the lack of oxygen made me just feel like I was dying. And it was like I just panic, like what's going on? And it took me, a few seconds to get myself together to where I was like, all right, you're not dying. You just stop breathing, just breathe. And that is not good. That is not good to go through a lot over time, like constantly. And then that was actually the thing that I was suffering from that really pushed me to start getting hardcore with my lifestyle. I wasn't keto or carnivore yet per se, but I was like, all right, I had been reading enough, and as everything was pushing me toward, I got towards the center of the solar system there, like everything was kind of pushing me towards restricting down and getting rid of everything that has seed oils, refined carbohydrates, grains, and sugar. All that had to go. So that would put me in what you would call a paleo diet. And it's funny because back then paleo, before it was kind of just starting to become popular, there was kind of like this back and forth between the purists and like the pop paleo people, like Nom Nom Paleo and Paleo My God and all these influencer websites with their recipes and everything. But the fundamentalists said that humans didn't eat fruit vegetables, humans didn't eat rice, humans didn't eat this or that. So it really put me into a ketogenic diet without even realizing that, because I was only eating leafy green vegetables and asparagus and that kind of thing, and a lot of meat, a lot of butter and stuff. So I lost I think about 70 pounds in 8 months, and I was reaching weights that I never thought I'd be able to get to again. Like I was generally about 225 most of the time in my junior, senior, and my sophomore, junior, senior year. I was about 6'2". I was pretty jacked in high school, very muscular. So I was like 225. during those years, and I think maybe I'll get back down to my high school weight, and I hit that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, and I just kept going. I got down to like 190. I was like, all right, that's enough. So I started lifting weights again and everything. But yeah, the sleep apnea was gone, and I really realized when I was like, this has to change. What really prompted the change was that I realized when I was eating those seed oil, grainy type meals like pasta, bread, like something like Hamburger Helper or something, and especially when I drank beer, that's when I had the really horrific, the horrific sleep apnea that lasted all night, where I just couldn't get to sleep. I could not just breathe. And I was going to bed at like 2, 3 in the morning just because, not going to bed, but like getting to sleep at like 2, 3 in the morning because I just could not get to sleep. My body wouldn't let me breathe. So that was, and I was like, and I think everybody who falls into that sickness and pharmaceutical death spiral reaches a point, whether it's conscious or not, where they say, okay, I have to change, or they just decide like, I guess this is just going to be my life. And unfortunately for me, I was like, I really felt like you have to change or you're going to die. I don't know what it is about me, and people like us too, like a lot of people, I would say most people would rather just enter the pharmaceutical sickness death spiral than make these changes, mostly because we're dealing with very addictive substances that are not food that they're consuming as food. So yeah, the sleep apnea was the initiatory point where I was like, all right, you got to change or you're going to die, because I really felt like I was dying. And everything I was reading about those types of episodes is really bad for your heart, really stressful on your heart. And so that's what put me into paleo. About 5 years later, a friend of mine had mentioned, he was like a biohacker type guy. And he was like, all right, you're very healthy right now. Do you want to be healthy or do you want to be optimal? And I don't know. It was like, some people might just be, satisfied with, I'm healthy, I'm fine, but I was like, I want to be optimal. What do you mean optimal? What do you mean I'm not optimal? He's like, if you want to be optimal, you gotta be keto. So I went keto for 5 years, and so I'm 52 years old right now. I'm a firefighter, which, a firefighter is a very, very intense, high intense lifestyle. You're training and working in 75 pounds of gear that is suffocatingly hot, especially this time of year. And it's just a high intensity, high demand, energy demand lifestyle that I shouldn't be able to do according to the carb. According to the carb cult, I should be failing miserably at this task. So.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Yeah. So you've done paleo for about 5 years, and also the ketogenic diet for 5 years. So, how long did you do your research for? Like, once your friend introduced you you want to be optimal or just be healthy, right? Like, jumping into carnivore, did it took you like a while? For me, it took me like some time because I was really kind of like very curious and scared at the same time. I might get the benefit later on, or I might die before I get the benefit. The oxalate dumping. Mm-hmm. Who were the first people you listened to, or yeah?
I don't really remember per se. I just know that I started connecting with other ketogenic people, not even influencers per se, but just I was just in the keto community, so to speak. And not all ketogenic people are carnivore, but all carnivores are basically ketogenic. So there was a natural mixture of carnivores in the keto community. And I had actually never really, when I first heard of carnivore, I thought it was an internet gag, like eating Tide Pods. Why would you only want to eat meat? Of course you need plants. Of course you need fiber. Of course you need phytonutrients and all of these silly little things that are actually bad for you that they say is good for you. But of course you need that. But I had a friend of mine who had a really terrible autoimmune disorder that I didn't even know she was struggling with, but it was kind of like a Michaela Peterson type situation where she was just sick all the time and everything just inflamed her sickness and she was miserable. So she tried carnivore and, she eventually got off all of her medications and almost completely healed herself. And I was like, oh, wow, that's actually for real. And like I said, I was hearing the carnivores all the time, like plants are bad for you. I'm like, yeah, the plants are bad for you. And I was really starting to figure out that, like the less plants I eat, the more optimal I'm going to be. But I was like, I genuinely thought that I liked vegetables. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I like Brussels sprouts. I like asparagus. I'm just going to keep eating them. It's fine. It's not bothering me very much. And of course I realized it was bothering me, and then later on, I kind of realized that I don't really like the vegetables. I just pretended to like them because I thought they were healthy. Like nobody likes kale. Like I never liked kale. I convinced myself that I loved kale because I thought kale was a superfood. And then I found out that before marketing took over with kale, the number one purchaser of kale was actually Pizza Hut. They used it to decorate their salad bars. Like nobody ate kale, and it was just marketing. And that's one of the coolest and most like profound things I've learned in my research and everything is that most of what everybody thinks about their health is actually just marketing. It's actually just trying to sell seed oils and grains and heart healthy nonsense. Everything is, or to push you in a state of sickness so that you're forced to enter the medical care system and buy pharmaceutical drugs and have invasive, interventions that cost, massive, that empty your bank account or whatever, or feed the insurance industry. It's just all marketing basically. So, for probably over the course of the keto stage of my journey, I was slowly hearing people convince me that less plants are more optimal. And then when I finally took the jump, I realized just how much, how real that was.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. How quickly did you notice the changes, like with the sleep apnea getting better? Because I know you talked about the tennis elbow, I think a few weeks, 2 weeks, and then pretty much like pain, like leaving your body. What about the sleep apnea? Did it get better? Like pretty much a couple of weeks also?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember exactly. I knew, like, I already knew, like I said, that the grains that were really flaring it up and making it worse. So naturally, not eating the grains, definitely helped it out. There was other things too, like diet sodas and aspartame. That always kind of flared up my anxiety really bad. Getting rid of that helped out a lot. Getting rid of energy drinks, the sucralose helped out a lot. But it was almost immediately pretty much like, I'm sure I got it, at times initially, but over time, I can't remember the last time I've had an attack like that. It's been well over 10 years. And probably since the last time I quit drinking beer pretty much. I'm sorry, I got a scratch in my throat. It's killing me. There we go. Sorry about that. And then, another thing that I realized when I went paleo and cut out the seed oils was I wasn't burning anymore in the sun. I would go out. I had a pretty large yard. I had like a 2-acre yard, and I didn't have a lot of money back then, so I just used a push mower to mow 2 acres. And it used to be if I was out there for 30 or 40 minutes, I'd be pretty red, pretty burned. And then I would be out there for like 3 hours. And I'm like, wow, I'm only a little bit sun-kissed right now. And it's funny, I hadn't actually heard that the seed oils get into your skin and alter your skin composition with the unnatural fat that your skin's made from that causes that inflammation from the sun. But I was just attributing it. I was like, man, do you burn less when you get older or something? I didn't get it. So, but that was also a huge effect of being paleo and cutting out the seed oils.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. With my health issues, I had so many assumptions, what was the root cause before finding out carnivore. I look back at my own health issues. I think about stress, maybe it could be genetics or a specific food trigger, or maybe, maybe I'm just dirty. That's why I have skin issues. Did you have any assumptions before finding out carnivore? What was causing, the trouble sleeping with you, or maybe stress or something else, the overweight?
No, I really think that it was just intuitive. It was just I didn't always eat bad every night, but on the nights that I did eat bad, I started noticing the pattern. Like I have really bad sleep apnea tonight, and then I like, oh, I drank some beer earlier, or I ate something really terrible. I ate like we call it, like up in New Jersey they call it hoagies. We call them po' boys. I'd eat like a roast beef po' boy or something, with a big giant piece of bread or something, and I'd just be awful at night trying to sleep. So it was really just intuitive. I actually had not even, and I still don't even really know what the connection is, because I don't even know if the type of sleep apnea I have is common enough for anyone to have drawn the connection. I imagine it probably had something to do with the vagus nerve that connects your gut to your brain. Like maybe I was inflaming my vagus nerve, and it was sending or blocking signals to my brain to breathe, or to that nerve that connects the diaphragm. I don't really know. I really don't know what it was. I just put two and two together, that every time I ate this way, I was having really bad sleep apnea. At the same time, learning that grains and seed oils and these types of foods were really, really harmful for people. And so I was like, all right, this is the perfect time to implement what I know. Just all of this stuff has to go, and I just have to buckle down and deal with it. One day I just decided, all right, I'm going to have my last fast food Wendy's sandwich, my last Monterey chicken sandwich from Wendy's, and then tomorrow I'm going to kick into gear and kick it all out. And that's what I did for. Now I was on and off the wagon on Paleo and Keto. I only really fully locked it down during Carnivore, and I don't know what it was that really just set me off. I was just like, I'm not ever going to, like, I don't cheat anymore. I don't really relapse anymore. I see cheesecake in front of me or something. I used to be a sucker for cheesecake. If I see cheesecake in front of me now, I just kind of look at it and laugh about it, because I just don't want it. I don't know. I don't really know where that switch went off, or I don't fall off the wagon anymore. So, but.
Yeah, that's very cool. Steven, can you talk about your motivation, maybe before Carnivore, and what motivates you now? Like before Carnivore, I'm slightly depressed, because I have all these health issues. So I feel like, can I find something that's going to help me get better, And then now that I found Carnivore, I feel like I'm so full of energy, wanting to do everything. I feel everything is limitless. I want to join every tennis competition out there, and then I want to do full marathon sometimes in the fall. What motivates you now?
So if you don't mind getting into a bit of conspiracy theory territory here, but back in the early 20th century, maybe before, but there was this so-called science called eugenics, where they were basically trying to breed humans that were. It's basically the philosophy of Hitler with the Aryan race. They're trying to make the perfect human being and kind of like phase out the undesirable types humans. And then Hitler put a really bad face on that, so they needed a PR makeover. So they changed the whole marketing scheme around to what's called social engineering. And the social engineers, they couldn't breed us out of existence, so they just wanted to control us. So they would literally brag that through medications and injections and poor diet and indoctrination in school and just kind of like this manufactured garbage culture, that they were going to create the type of human that would make us easy to rule. Kind of what, if you've ever seen the NPC, the non-playable character meme, where the person just doesn't have a soul, they just like take the programming out and the old programming out, and put the new one in. And you really saw that during COVID, because people just turned on like a switch and were just completely bought into it. And it was just an obvious psyop. And I hope I can say that and not get you banned. But when I started figuring that out, that was a big motivation for me to start learning. I didn't, like I said, I didn't implement everything until I went paleo, because I really felt like I was dying. But In the first like decade of the new century, to like 2006, 2007, 2008ish, I really started learning about this stuff. And I was like, wow, these people want me to kill myself for them or make myself sick for them. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. So that's when I started really learning about everything that I'm talking about. And that became my initial motivation, was like, if you guys want to kill me, you're going to have to get personal, because I'm not killing myself for you. It's kind of like a spiritual warfare thing where, they have convinced everybody to harm, instead of harming them directly, they've convinced everybody to harm themselves for them. And I'm not doing that. That's a big reason why I think I don't ever cheat or deviate, because in my mind, like, the best way that I could throw my middle finger in the face of those people is just to be as completely optimal as I can and never, ever consume their slop ever. So that was my motivation. I was like, at first that was my motivation. I was just very, very stubbornly, throwing it back in their face that I'm not going to kill myself for you. And then once I realized, like, that's the reason why a lot of people in our space are so obnoxious about healthy, lifestyle and everything, because we feel alive and healthy in a way that no one else does. Like they don't know what it's like to feel healthy, because they've spent their entire lives being sick. They have no idea what it feels like to be like us. And a lot of people get really, really obnoxious about it. There's actually a funny South Park episode called Gluten-Free Ebola, where everybody at the school goes gluten-free, and they're just like, oh my God, I feel so amazing. And they're just totally obnoxious. Oh my God, you got to do this. You got to try it. And it's very, very funny, but it's actually how we are sometimes, because you're like the zombie and you're just like a walking dead person. And then all of a sudden you're alive again. And you're like, oh my God, you have to try this. There's no way for us to make other people feel the way we feel. We can only tell them about it. And, telling them about it when they're addicted is just not enough. So, but that's my motivation, is the fact that I know that our society is literally engineered to make me basically a slave, and to make me, suggestible and traumatized, and basically a non-playable character, like a soulless human being, like a golem. And I don't want to be like that. So it sounds crazy, and I'm not making it up. I mean, you can look up Rudolf Steiner and Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Russell wrote a whole book about it. It's called Impact of Science on Society, where he said, we're going to give you injections and poor schooling and garbage culture and turn you into the kind of person that will make the ruling class control you better, and make you, more pleasing for the, more easy to control, basically. So that was my motivation at first. And then, once I started feeling like an optimal human again, I mean, like, and then you go to Walmart and you see everybody and they're just fat and sick and weak. And like, I don't want anything to do with that ever again, even just a little bit. I don't want even just a bite of your cake or your fried foods, or just any of that slop that they tell us to eat, or that everybody just like, oh my God, it's so good. And I guess you're just literally addicted to drugs that's marketed as food. I don't want nothing to do with it. That's my motivation. That's my drive, to be optimal. And like I said, I want to be optimal. And then when I felt optimal, I'm like, when you feel optimal, you don't want to not feel optimal anymore. So that's me. That's me in a nutshell. And then I want to help everybody else be that way too, because humanity is in a lot of trouble. In America, 93% of us are metabolically diseased at some level. That's, 93 out of 100 people are diseased. And that's a dying society. And everybody just laughs about it. And I'm like, this is how societies die. And you don't want to live in a dying society. Just look at all the stories about, Eastern Europe and all these failed states. How awful their lives were when their society collapses, and when their monetary system collapses and they can't get food. It's just terrible. You're like, why is that funny? It's just really interesting. So that's what motivates me. Just being the strong humans that are going to have to guide the weak humans out of the hard times they've created, basically.
I like your motivation. I feel like this is more than just bringing awareness. It's actually finding the best way to translate, uh, to other people who's not familiar with carnivore, or like, maybe somebody's looking to improve their health. I think just like finding the best way to translate this feeling, the best feeling that you've ever had. Yeah. Uh, Stephen, before going carnivore, what was your favorite food?
Oh goodness. Well, I'm from New Jersey, like we talked about before the show. So, like I would say before I would basically say that before I went paleo, I would talk about my favorite food. So like being from New Jersey, real cheesesteaks, real pizza from the off the boat guineas that live up there. They just have the most wonderful pizzerias you've ever had food from. Philadelphia, Tony Luke's, the roasted pork with the smoked provolone and the roasted peppers and the broccoli rabe. I mean, just fantastic sandwiches. Real New York bagels with pork roll. Like most of the people who are watching this have probably never heard of pork roll. I don't know how we don't have pork roll down here in the South with all the pork products. These people eat hog's head cheese and don't know what pork roll is. That's amazing to me. Just your run of the mill New Jersey Northeast slop, with pizza, and there's Chinese food and from real Asian people, sushi, that kind of stuff, like all of that. I indulge in all of it, like just about. And I live, and before I got married, at about 26, I was working in New Jersey. I mean, working in Atlantic City, and I was living in Atlantic City. And Atlantic City is a 24-hour town like New York, because the casinos stay open 24 hours, so they can't put a curfew on everybody else, because everybody would sue them, obviously. So all the pizzerias are open 24 hours. All the Chinese restaurants, all the delivery places are 24 hours. And I'd be up till 4, 5, 6 in the morning and getting takeout food at 2 o'clock in the morning, chicken tenders, buffalo wings, whatever. It was just unbelievable amounts of slop, and I loved it all. And it was moving down here made it a little bit easier, because they don't have any of that stuff down here that's worth anything. The pizza's no good. There's no cheesesteaks. The only place you're going to get a cheesesteak is Subway. That's not a cheesesteak. That's not a Philly cheesesteak. We don't have real bagels. We might have some real Chinese food. Probably more authentic, like Tex-Mex Mexican food down here than might have been up north. But yeah, all of that stuff was all my favorite. Calzones, a cheesesteak calzone. I would just absolutely annihilate a big giant, ball of flour wrapping a cheesesteak. Just every abomination imaginable. It's New Jersey.
Yeah, that's very cool. Steven, so looking back at the start of your carnivore journey, I think you mentioned February 23, right? Like, were there any mistakes you made? I think you talked about a little bit about seed oils here and there. Like, what did you learn anything from them, or like were you able to adjust like smoothly?
Yeah, the thing about my transition is I was already keto before I went carnivore. And then being in a contest prep for bodybuilding, I started titrating down my plant intake, just not even realizing that there was a transition process you should probably go through because of the oxalate dumping, because of the microbiome shock that can occur, and all the things that can go wrong when you go cold turkey. So I was already on a meat-based, high-fat, low-carb diet, and then probably over the course of 8 to 10 weeks in my prep, I slowly started eating less and less and less vegetables until I was like ketovore, and then eventually just cut it out completely. So I had really no issues with oxalate dumping, some histamine issues perhaps. When I would eat meat, I would get real puffy in my eyes, like I was having an allergic reaction, and that went on for quite a while too. I was really worried that was never going to stop. But I don't have that problem anymore. Thank God. It was really annoying. That's the takeaway. If anybody is watching this that's thinking about going carnivore, make sure you transition properly. If you can afford to get a coach like me, definitely invest in one for maybe 3 months or so to help the transition. And because not only do you have the oxalate dumping and the microbiome issues, but if you've been consuming a standard American or a standard Western diet for your entire life, you likely have you might just want to lose weight, but like being overweight or having excess fat is just the outward show for what is likely multiple metabolic disorders, inside. And your body has its own priorities for healing those. So some people lose weight right away. Some people just melt the weight right off like I did. And then some people, they're like, why aren't I losing weight? And you ask them, well, how are you feeling? And they're like, well, I feel great otherwise. I'm not losing any weight. Like, well, your body is healing other things. One of the things that's healing is your hormones, your thyroid, and everything. That's everything. Your pancreas, everything that's involved with hormones are likely pretty banged up. And you're not going to lose weight when your hormones are banged up. Because as most of us know in the carnivore community, losing weight has very little to do with calories, and almost everything to do with hormones. Hormones are dictating everything. Hormones are dictating whether you're using energy or storing energy. So you really need to be patient with yourself. You need to be very, very observant with how much you're eating and what you're eating, because some people, like, let's look at Bella. Like, Bella eats Bella, the steak and butter gal, eats massive amounts of fat. She eats butter like a candy bar, and she is, very, very lean. And then other people, just they eat a bunch of fat and they stay fat, or they might actually gain fat. Like me, I cannot eat a lot of fat. If I eat a really super high fat diet, I will puff up. So I have kind of just paid attention to my macro ratios and got myself figured out. And you might need, and then that might change for you during your healing journey. Your body might not want a lot of fat at first, and then it might shift gears and go to healing something else that it needs a lot of fat for. So, and things might go wrong for you, and you need someone you need someone that knows how to read your blood panels, because your normal blood panels, your blood panel is going to be different on a low carb diet than it is going to be on a high carb diet. And a lot of people leave carnivore because their blood panel perceives them as hypothyroid, when really that's just your body's hormones adjusting to you not consuming any glucose or carbohydrates. And it's perfectly normal. It's perfectly fine. You're not hypothyroid. Your body just doesn't need the T3. So it's just things like that. There's a lot of nuance involved, and you have to be very careful. You have to be very observant. You have to be very patient. And you have to realize too, like, a lot of people, they feel like they're using carnivore as a tool or a hack. And that's not what it is. The reason why carnivore works is because it's the most indicated, appropriate diet for the human species. It's not just something you try out and see if it works. Like, this is what you're supposed to be eating. That's why it works when it works. And if it doesn't work, like, I don't want to sound like a vegan and say you're doing it wrong, because you're not really doing it wrong. You're just not taking into account what you're healing, the fact that you're healing, and then what you might be healing from. You might need more of one thing one time and less of it, another time. And it's a process. You've been abusing your body for many, many years, and you're going to take, upwards of a year or two. The body's a miracle. It's going to heal. It's going to heal relatively quickly compared to how long you've been abusing it. But it's not going to happen overnight. There you go.
Very well said. Thanks for pointing that out. Mm-hmm. Stephen, what does a typical day or maybe week eating look like for you now? Do you keep it consistent, or do you switch things up from time to time? Maybe you can walk me through your daily eating ways. Yeah. Sure.
I mean, I keep it simple. I keep it, I don't, I have a very eat to live, not live to eat mindset. So I don't mind eating the same things every day. I typically stick to ground beef because it's cheapest, especially with the last few years. The cost of a steak is pretty high. Ground beef has gone up as well, but it's still relatively manageable. So I have my own chickens. I have 25 laying hens out in my yard. I get my own eggs and I feed them a corn and soy-free organic feed. So I know I'm giving them the best and I'm getting the best. So in the morning, typically, I will have 1 whole egg and 5 egg yolks. I throw out the whites, not the yolks. And I'll scramble that with some organic beef sausage from Costco and maybe some ground beef. And then most of the time for dinner, I will make about a pound of ground beef into 4-ounce patties, and I will smoke those for a couple hours, and then just sear them in the cast iron. Throw some butter on it, butter with my eggs as well. The only thing plant-based that I'm consuming right now would be hot sauce. I'm kind of a sucker for the truff habanero sauce or the Melinda's ghost pepper sauce. Just a few shakes of that on my breakfast and on my burgers. Not a lot. I got rid of it one time to see how it affected me, and I didn't feel any effect getting rid of it. And then when I reintroduced it back, it didn't hit me very hard. So I figured it was probably pretty okay. That's one of the good things you can do. Like, get rid of it for a while, see if you feel better, and then add something back in, see if it makes you feel worse. That's a good strategy to have. And then like at my local grocery store, sometimes they'll put some steaks on reduced. Like yesterday I went to the store and they had reduced boneless beef short ribs. And so I grabbed that. It was like a pound for like $6. I grabbed that and smoked them. I smoke everything. I'm a smoker. I smoke all of the things. I just
nice.
Yeah, it's one of the things it's probably one of the things that keeps me sane, because I just enjoy, I don't know, something primal about smoked meat, smoked everything. When it's cold out, I'll smoke butter. I smoke salt. And I just I don't know, I was seeing something in my Instagram feed, probably people eating hard-boiled eggs. And I don't really care for hard-boiled eggs, but I was like, man, I really love smoked hard-boiled eggs. So I smoked some. So I made some hard-boiled eggs and smoked those. Those are phenomenal. That's about, probably about twice a month. I will buy some organic bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, and I'll cut the bones out, and I'll air fry those, get the skin real crispy. That's probably actually my favorite thing to eat. It's called crackling chicken. It's absolutely amazing. It's just not particularly nutrient dense. So it's just something I do on occasion. I really go for more bang for the buck. So it's the beef, it's ground beef, especially. Ground beef is typically more satiating, more nutrient dense than other forms of the actual steak, even though I enjoy the steak more, but the ground beef is more satiating. I find a lot of times, even if I eat like a ribeye, I'll be hungry. A few hours later, I'll be like, oh, I'm hungry again. Whereas if I eat when I eat my ground beef and egg breakfast, I'm not hungry again for like 8, 9, 10 hours. It's just way more satiating, which helps me keep my costs down. And speaking of monitoring how you react to foods and everything, I am not I always bring her up because it's amazing that I probably weigh 50, 60, 70 pounds more than she does. But Bella, the steak and butter girl, eats literally twice as much as I do. And I'm 200 pounds. I have stayed 200 pounds since I quit bodybuilding. I've been 200 pounds, just consistently. I don't go up or down. I don't really waver. And I eat basically the same thing again every day, which is basically about 1.5 pounds of beef, not a lot, and the 6 eggs, and maybe a quarter stick of butter. It's not a lot of food. And there's a lot of other people who feel like they have to have a lot more fat, a lot more protein, a lot more total mass. And that's something that they have to figure out. But for me, if I eat a lot more than that consistently, I'm going to get puffy. I'm going to put fat on. And I'm not trying to be like vain or anything. But I do work out hard. I do train really hard, and I like to be able to see my abs and everything. And when the abs start disappearing, I know I'm eating too much.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And with your job, I think you mentioned, because it's very physically demanding and you work out a lot. I think this is very good that you have so many things with what you eat to support pretty much, everything. Um, Stephen, curious about this question. Have you ever done something unconventional within the carnivore framework? Let me explain this question, right? There are carnivores who doesn't brush their teeth, or maybe like once a week, like me. There's some people who does not take showers. Some people who use tallow to like wash their face. Maybe something odd or something it's not very common. I think there's also the primal eaters, people who eat raw. What about you? Have you done something like unconventional?
Yeah, good questions. I still brush my teeth every single day, and I floss every day. I mostly floss not. I mostly floss just to massage my gums, just because when my gums are massaged, they just feel and look healthier. But it's amazing that I really don't feel like I don't have bad breath for one thing. Like there's no film of filth on my tongue that's giving me halitosis or anything that you get from consuming the carbs and the garbage. So I like I don't need to brush my teeth as often as I do. Probably I do just because, it's just out of habit. I'm just trying to, and like I said, I'm 52 years old. Like my mom had dentures. She lost her teeth. I don't want to lose my teeth. So I'm just taking care of them, but I'm not going overboard. I don't brush 3 times a day. And like I said, I floss just to keep my gums, just to massage my gums mostly. Deodorant's kind of the same way. I mean, like I do wear deodorant. I wear like an aluminum free deodorant, and actually, one of the local soap shops that I have around here made a tallow deodorant that I really like. That I think is free from toxins that I would want to worry about, but I don't smell the way I used to when I was consuming garbage. Like it's amazing how much what you eat comes out of your skin when you sweat. Like we have this guy that I work with, and he does not eat very well. And when we get real sweaty and stanky training at the fire department, like he's like you can smell it on him. I'm not I tried to tell him, I was like, that's not a good sign. That means, you're eating really bad. He kind of got upset about it, or maybe not upset about it, maybe fake upset about it. But, so yeah, I mean, I definitely don't shower every day. And that has as much to do with not smelling, as it does. Just I learned that it's not healthy to keep scrubbing the layers of skin off yourself. Like you have different layers of skin, and it's not healthy to keep, just like scrubbing that off of you and exposing yourself. So I take as few showers as I need to. Like when I work at the fire department and I'm wearing my gear, I obviously have to take a shower. Otherwise I'm just gonna be rancid after a workout like that. But as far as raw meat, like I'm agnostic on raw meat. Like Anthony Shafee says, we've been eating cooked meat for 1.6 million years. That's plenty long enough to affect an evolutionary or an adaptation to it. And this is something that I think is important. I'm glad you asked the question, because more does not always equal better. I think that goes into a whole biohacking type kind of idea where you can just give your body more of good things and your body will just be like, oh, okay, cool. Kind of like dumping nitrous, into your gas tank for your car, and it makes your car go faster or whatever, it's like, but that's not how your body works. And the best example I can give to you is vitamin C. And as you know, we hear about vitamin C all the time in carnivore because people think we're going to get scurvy, and we don't, even though we don't consume plants that are high in vitamin C. But when you don't consume carbohydrates, your body needs more vitamin C because it uses vitamin C to process all of these all of the carbohydrates, all the plants I believe you use a lot of vitamin C to convert non-heme iron into heme iron, these types of things. You need more resources to digest and process the plants. You don't need that on carnivore. That's why we don't get scurvy. So I believe that the need for vitamin C on a zero carb diet is in the nanograms. It's a billionth of a gram. It's very, very low, and there's more than enough of that in beef or meat, even though it's relatively low compared to like citrus or whatever. And the thing about vitamin C is they say it's like the super vitamin or whatever. Just keep taking vitamin C, like overload on it. People take vitamin C IVs and everything. When you have too much vitamin C, your body converts it into oxalate. and we've been talking about, you don't want oxalate. Oxalate is bad. It's not good in excessive amounts. That's where you get you get kidney stones and that type of thing from too much oxalates. It turns into little tiny shards of glass and embeds itself in your soft tissues. So too much of a good thing is bad. So that's where I kind of deviate from a lot of people saying you need to eat lots of liver and you need, and these raw food people saying that we're now, not everyone who eats raw says this, but a lot of raw people get kind of get in their heads and they get kind of egoic about it, where they're just like, it's not enough for them to be better than the rest of society because they're only eating meat. They got to be better than all the carnivores too. So it's like, oh, you're nutrient deficient because you're cooking your food. And I'm like, first of all, I don't cook most of my food until it's dry and cooked through. You know what I mean? Like when I eat a steak, it's medium rare. Or if it's a fillet, it's usually rare. I just sear a fillet or a sirloin, something low fat. I'll just sear it. And a fillet I can actually probably see myself smashing just raw, just picking it up and just eating it because it's so tender. And as a matter of fact, last time I ate a deer backstrap, if you ever had backstrap, it's super, super tender on a deer. Last time I had one of those, I made it super rare, and I was like, you know what? Next time I'm just going to smash it raw. Most of the time, I especially like my fat rendered a little bit. I don't like hard fat. So if I make like a ribeye or something, it'll be, at least rare. And I let it get down to room temperature first and then cook it rare. But if you're going to eat nose to tail for one thing, which you should, I will guarantee you that there's not a person on earth that could take a chunk of beef cheek and eat it raw. Like you're going to have to saw off a piece with a knife and fork, and then you can't even chew it. It's just pure sinew and collagen, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world if you cook it right. But you got to slow cook that boy for like 8 to 12 hours, and constantly stir it, and it's freaking amazing. It's one of my favorite cuts of meat. But that's 8 to 12 hour cooking process. You are not going to eat that raw. And if you want to eat a brisket raw, I don't know what to tell you. Like you're just ruining a beautiful cut of meat that should be smoked all day. When I eat brisket, I smoke it for 16 hours. You know what I mean? Like it just tastes better. Like I said, we've been eating. So even if you are getting more nutritional value from a raw cut of meat, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm nutritionally deficient because I cook it. You know what I mean? Like you might be getting way more than your body needs, and your body just doesn't do anything with more than what it needs. It's either toxic, like the oxalates, or it just sends it to the toilet. And it's like, thanks, but I don't really need this. Again, it's not a machine where you can hack it or you can pimp it up, like you can pimp your ride or whatever and add these little gadgets and everything and make it perform better or whatever. It just, your body's going to use what it needs, and it's going to get rid of what it doesn't need. And that's if it's not toxic in the first place. So as far as red meat goes, like I do not prefer red meat and most of the time, like raw ground beef. Like I've eaten beef tartare before. It's not my favorite. I don't want to say it repulses me or anything. I just like a little bit of a sear on my steaks, and I love, like I said, I love my smoked meat. So if you like raw beef, if you genuinely like your meat raw, then eat it raw. Obviously, it's fine. You're not. I don't really. I think the risk of foodborne illnesses is very low, especially with beef, especially if it's nice grass-fed beef. If you genuinely like your beef raw, eat it raw, but don't eat it raw because you think you're better than everybody. That's my advice. Don't tell me I'm nutrient deficient when chances are good. I mean, I'm not the most badass person in the world, but chances are good that if we got on the training field at my fire ground, I would wipe the floor with you. Chances are good. And
Yeah.
so you know what I mean? Like, don't tell me I'm nutrient deficient. It's just silly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with the whole sentiment. Yeah. Steven, is there anything hard or difficult with carnivore for you? Examples of this are like the social gatherings with family and friends who are non-carnivores, right? Like for me, the travel. Whenever I have to go to a different location I'm not familiar, I have to scout the location, Google Maps. And the cravings took me like over a year to get it out of my system. Also, like lately, like kind of like a mind games, like how you feel so good, but then you see people around you sick. I think you talk about like when you go to Walmart, you see like people overweight, having this really bad condition, seeing your friends and family who are sick, but it's hard to translate to them, what carnivore is and what it can do for you. Like, yeah, is there anything hard or difficult?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. Mark and I, like you talk about Mark, Fitness Beyond Time. Mark and I talk about this all the time. It's just so difficult to have this knowledge, this life transforming knowledge. And it doesn't even have to be this strict. Like I always say, if I can just get people on a paleo diet, like even if you're eating sweet potatoes and white rice and you're eating some carbohydrates, but you're not guzzling seed oils and grains and corn and wheat and all this garbage and all the sugar and sodas and high fructose corn syrup and everything. And if we could just get people on that type of diet, we would probably put most of the pharmaceutical medical industry out of business. That would make me very, very happy. That would be a major win. I am super fundamentalist only for myself. I would be very happy to coach somebody into a paleo lifestyle, and just take the training wheels off and send them on their way and let them figure out the rest for themselves. Just get them healthy again. Because paleo transformed me. Like I was 38 years old and I was doing Taekwondo and doing all kinds of spinning jump kicks and sparring with people half my age and just running around, jumping around like a madman again. And when, not long before that, I really felt like I was dying. So that was really incredible. So that's the hardest part, is like having, but even just getting people to that point, because all of the slop is like I say, I think that's the most important thing we have to commit to people, is that you're not consuming food. This is not food. Just because you put it in your mouth and swallow it does not make it food. And these are all very, very highly addictive drugs that are marketed as food. Like when you pick up a bag of Doritos, that's drugs. When you pick up a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew, that's drugs. These are drugs. And they're actually more addictive than illicit street drugs. It's more addictive than heroin. It's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. When they got rats addicted to sugar and they gave rats sugar and cocaine, when they got rats addicted to cocaine, and they gave rats sugar and cocaine, the rats went for the sugar over the cocaine. They were addicted to cocaine, but they went for the sugar. That's how much it lights up the pleasure centers of your brains, like a pinball machine. So knowing that and not being able to impart that onto people and having people just roll their eyes at you and like, oh, it must be real fun at parties and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm not fun at parties actually, because I got to sit there and watch you people destroy yourselves. And it's not fun. It's not fun at all. Social situations, it's more hard for other people than it is for me. Cause I will go to a restaurant. I do not eat out ever, because I've worked in kitchens before, and I know that even if you have a deep fryer with seed oils in it, that deep fryer is spattering seed oils all over the entire kitchen, all over every surface, over every piece of food is exposed, and the whole kitchen is just dripping with seed oils. I've had to clean these industrial kitchens, and the seed oil. I'm like, how is this how you find places that are just covered in seed oil residue. And I'm like, how is the seed oil here? It's like 20 feet from the fryer, like, and then not only that, like their butter is almost never butter. It's usually a butter margarine blend or something, and and like I used to manage an Applebee's, and we used to cut our own sirloins. We take a big giant butt of sirloin and cut it into 6, 8, and 12-ounce steaks. And one day I saw that there was an ingredients list on the box, and my ingredients list, this is sirloin, this is raw product, and it was as long as my arm, and it was all seed oils and injections and flavor enhancers and just things to make it more tender, like tenderizers and everything, industrial. Like it was just a total abomination. And I was like, oh my God, I've been eating the steak almost every day thinking I'm just eating steak, on the grill. And then I was like, well, what's the chicken look like? The raw chicken breast. And like, same thing, list as long as my arm. So it's not difficult for me per se. I just don't eat, and I'll just sit there. I'm like, hey, I'm just hanging out with you guys. I'm socializing, and they're like, you're not going to eat, and they feel uncomfortable that I'm not eating with them. I'm like, don't worry about it. I'm fine. I already ate. I'm not hungry. So it's always a thing with them. I would probably eat at a fine dining restaurant because I have worked at a fine dining restaurant, and the chefs are very, very, very knowledgeable about those types of things. They don't like flavor enhancers. They hate seed oils. They hate anything that's going to ruin the quality of their food. They take very, very great pride in their product. So I know that typically they're probably putting out a product that's very, very pure, and you're going to pay for it too. So that's a big reason why I don't eat out, because I'll just cook the food at home for way cheaper and way better. Yeah. And then, having to go out into society and looking in people's shopping carts and seeing these fat, overweight people, these people, like, they have to drive, they're younger than me. They have to drive these scooters because they're too fat to get around, too fat and weak to get around. And their shopping cart is just filled with pure slop. I'm also, as a firefighter, most of our calls as a firefighter are actually medical calls. And we don't really fight a lot of fires. So most of the calls we go to are going to be medical calls. And actually, I just graduated EMT school with the state, and I take my national registry on the 24th. Actually, also I'll be like an official EMT, and I'll be working for the ambulance. And there is a whole underbelly of society that most of us don't know about just people who are so fat and sick and weak and just sick. Like, you never see them. They never leave their house. A lot of them never leave their bed because they're so fat, like, and they'll be having an emergency and you'll show up at their house and they've got a stack of Little Caesars pizza boxes next to their bed, and it's just amazing. I'm like, how are you doing this to yourself? How is this pizza more important than, so important to you that you actually do this to yourself? They're just living under the most horrible suffering conditions. I have to see that. And I can't say nothing to him, like I know I couldn't say anything to him anyway, even if I was allowed to say something to him, it wouldn't really register. I'm like, like, you don't have to live like this. What are you doing? So multiple times a shift, if I'm on the medical truck, multiple times a shift, I go out and help people. Like, there'll be people who are so sick that they'll fall out of their chair and can't get up. So somebody needs to come pick them up and put them back on the chair, or they'll fall off the toilet, and you get to their house and their pants are, around their ankles and they can't get off the floor. And it's so embarrassing. And sometimes I feel like I feel more embarrassed for them than they do. I guess they just have they don't have a shred of shame or dignity left them anymore if they've allowed themselves to get that bad. So that's very, very difficult. That's very, very difficult to know what I know, and to know what I know about what's being done to our society and why. Like, those people were made sick on purpose. And then these younger generations, they are, a lot of these influencers say that it's their fault because they're sick and they're fat and they're weak and everything. But by the time they're old enough to be responsible for themselves, they've been growing up in a home with addicted parents, and their parents are feeding them the same slop that they got addicted on. So by the time they're old enough to be addicted to, responsible for themselves, they're too addicted to get off the slop. So they just go right. They just keep the same lifestyle, and they just keep eating the same addictive crap, and their health just spirals down. And then you have, like, the epigenetic factor where, you're passing your you're passing your genes onto your kids, and then they're making themselves more sick, and then they're making a family and passing their sickened genes onto their kids, and it just spirals way down. And I can see that 35,000 foot view of everything happening, and knowing that they're doing that on purpose. That is very difficult. That is very frustrating. That is very spiritually draining. That's the hardest part for me. There's a part of me that wishes I could just go off into the mountains, having done everything that I could do, and just go off and enjoy the rest of my life in peace, and leave everybody to themselves, because the addiction is that strong. It's too strong for most of the people. They're not going to break it. Even a lot of people know about the same conspiracy that I'm talking to you about. They know about it, and they still go to McDonald's and get their chicken nuggets or their whatever. They I want some fries. So that's very difficult. Very difficult. It's very difficult to sit and be quiet. Like, I work at the fire department. Firefighters very typically eat very poorly because we're on shift, 24 hours. Even though we have a kitchen and we have an oven and you can make your own food and everything, but a lot of them would just rather go to Sonic or something, and I have to sit there and watch them, commit slow suicide basically, and not really say anything because I don't want to annoy people. I'm supposed to be part of the team and everything. And if they want to ask me about it, I'm happy to tell them, but I don't try and get in their face about it. It's very difficult.
Yeah. You know what? I completely with everything. Yeah. I think it's very triggering for me, the whole situation, because I feel like it's a double-edged sword, knowing what you know now about the nutrition and everything. Stephen, if you had to describe the impact of carnivore in your life, what one word would you describe it, and tell me why?
Godlike, if you in the Bible in particular, and many other like religions and mythologies, humans are gods walking the earth. Humans are, like, the Bible says, you're made in the image of your creator. And Jesus says, is it not written that you are gods? And, the Bible says that the human body is a temple of the Holy Spirit that dwells within us. And once you start moving towards that optimal core, like where you're not eating anything you're not supposed to be. And I don't even know if we'll ever actually get to that point in this world, because the environment is so toxic, everything that's going on in the air and the water, the electromagnetic fields that we're bathing in. So who knows? And like, most of us received injections in our youth against our will that might have kind of impeded our abilities and whatnot. But just getting all of that, just practicing as much harm reduction as possible, and approaching close to optimal as you're going to get. It's definitely like an empowered feeling, especially when you walk amongst, like we were just talking about, when you walk amongst the rest of society and see how sick and weak and just and stupid, like, I'm not saying that to but the food that they eat destroys their minds, and the medications that they have to take because their minds are destroyed because of the foods that they're eating destroys their minds further. I mean, like people on statins, you're destroying your mind. So yeah, like, it's and to be 52, I mean, like, to be my age, like I said, I'm an EMT. I have attended the deaths of people who are my age, people who just died in their sleep. Like he was fine when he went to sleep last night, and when I woke, I couldn't wake him up. What I mean? Like, you're my age, he's dead. You know what I mean? And and not only am I, no longer sick at all, but I'm able to do things that I probably wouldn't have been able. I could have done it when I was 20, but I was lazy. But like, there's kids, when I went to academy, I was 49 years old when I went to the academy, and I had 30 other kids in my class. And like there was probably only 3 or 4 of them that could keep up with me. You know what I mean? There was some very, very athletic, healthy track and field type, boys that were there who could run faster. They were a lot leaner. They could do more pull-ups. But like I was up there, I was up there I was up there at the elite of my class, and most of those kids were younger than my kids, so, I'm actually kind of excited to enter into what's considered like old age. Like I'm getting AARP literature in the mail now, the Association for Retired Persons. And I'm like, my God, I'm that old already. And like, but I don't feel that way. You know what I mean? My body doesn't feel that way. My mind doesn't feel that way. And it's kind of interesting, going to be interesting to see what happens as I get into my 60s, 70s, and 80s, when people are really expected to just fall apart and die at that point. Like witness me being able to just like, I have there's no signs of slowing down, and I really don't expect that I should have any signs of slowing down anytime soon, because I really think the human body is a miracle. And I think that we're capable of living well into our hundreds, maybe 110s, even up to 120, no problem, if we don't destroy ourselves. And and that's kind of a thing that I would impart on the people who are maybe thinking about this. A lot of people think that I don't enjoy life because I don't eat slop, I don't eat gumbo, and I don't eat cheesesteaks and pizza and everything that I used to enjoy anymore. And they think that I must have just turned off the enjoyment. No, you just find other ways to enjoy life. And one of the ways that life is enjoyable is that you're not falling apart. You're not achy. You're not on medications. You're not sick. You're not going to the hospital. You're not going to the doctor. Doctor, I don't feel good. Doctor, I feel like I'm dying. Doctor, and all the things that I'm able to do that most people my age can't do. That's a new kind of enjoyment. When I'll be able to play with my grandkids. That's whereas my grandfather, when I was a little baby, when I was a little boy, my grandfather just sat on the couch. And, he interacted with me or anything, but we didn't play, so I'll be able to play with my grandkids. So yeah, godlike, just approaching optimal, which I think is God. Like if you're a Christian, that should be like that. The Bible should be telling you not to eat the slop, it tells you to honor God by taking care of your body, and that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And what are you doing to it? You're dumping a bunch of trash in it. And I only mention Christianity first and foremost because most people in this country in particular would identify that way. And that, especially down here, I live in the Bible Belt, and I'm like, guys, you guys are Christians and you're destroying your temple. And they don't even think about it. That's the power of addiction, I guess. So.
Yeah, I fully agree. I also agree that, many people nowadays, non-carnivores, I feel like they attribute every health issue, with aging. I think I have a couple of friends who are like over 50s, and they say the same thing. I have this problem, I have this, I have that. And they just keep saying that it's something to do with aging. But it's not, so. Stephen,
you will age. Sorry. Yeah, I was saying you will age. You will age. You will die. I will die. I will age eventually. But that's pushing that 30, 40 years into the future. Beyond what most people consider. It's going to be interesting. When I'm 80. Am I going to? What's aging going to look like for me when I'm 80? So.
Yeah, exactly. So they attribute everything to aging, and then you don't have to suffer with health issues, and you could just age normally. Healthy body and everything. Stephen, so knowing what you know now about carnivore and nutrition, I'm sure you probably heard this question before. If you can give an advice to someone who maybe just starting carnivore, or maybe they saw you and you had a lot of improvement in success with Carnivore, but they're super skeptical, because it doesn't go with what their doctor is saying. They think they're gonna get a heart related issue, and they have no clue. What would you tell them?
Well, that's a quite a mountain to climb with people because, like I said, the entire establishment, our entire society is literally engineered over many, many decades and generations to turn us into what we've become: fat and sick and weak. Literally, you could literally do the opposite of what they tell you to do, and you would, like, almost everything would drastically improve your life. They tell you not to eat meat, you should eat meat. They tell you to eat fiber, you should not eat fiber. You should not eat plants. You should eat as few plants as heart healthy grains. That's a lie. That's not wrong. That's an inversion of the truth. And we know that diseases of civilization did not start until we started consuming grain. Until we started growing grains and wheat. That's why I tell people, they're like, oh, it's not the wheat, it's not the gluten, it's the glyphosate. And I'm like, it's the wheat too. The glyphosate is not great, but the wheat is not great either. It takes a lot of discernment and a lot of courage to tell your doctor that you're wrong. That I'm not worried about my cholesterol. And as a matter of fact, if you're going to enter into, like I said, this is the reason it works, is because this is the way you're supposed to eat. So, you know what I mean? Like, the best thing you can really do is enter into this lifestyle and then just fire your doctor. There's nothing your doctor is going to tell you that's going to alter the fact that you're eating a species appropriate diet. What are you going to do? You're going to go back to carbs? You're going to start eating carbs again? You think eating carbs again is going to make you better? That's what put you here in the first place. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to stand up to this establishment tsunami of misinformation. And, everybody's got this bias towards authority. They worship authority. You saw it during COVID, listen to the experts. Everybody worships the white coat and the expert. And, I deal with it all the time. I don't throw my nutrition certification in people's face. I just state facts. So I don't ever tell people, hey, I got the certification, I know what I'm talking about. I just state the facts. But a lot of people, it'll be like, as a cardiologist, this is why I oppose the carnivore diet, or as a nutritionist, or as a dietitian, this is why I oppose the carnivore diet. And it's like all of these experts throwing their expertise at you, and their credentials do sound daunting. They went to school and they spent tens of thousands of dollars on their schooling. They spent 10 years in school or whatever, and they should know what they're talking about. And they just don't. And a lot of people don't realize that these dietitian academies and these medical schools are literally owned by the pharmaceutical industry, by the ultra-processed food industry. The ultra-processed food industry is owned by the tobacco industry. These are the people influencing your health choices. Not a lot of people know that. So, and not a lot of people realize that their doctor went and learned nutrition and medicine, and their dietitian learned nutrition from them. And everything that they're spouting off is just complete nonsense. And it's got a lot of authority behind it. It's very, very difficult to convince people of that. It takes an enormous amount of discernment. I really thought people had that discernment before the COVID. You could tell people that, the pharmaceutical companies are, they're invested in keeping you sick. And they would agree. And then all of a sudden COVID hit and everybody's lined up for the shot and everybody's wearing masks and everybody's doing exactly what they told them to do. And I'm like, that was very, very painful to watch. I really thought people were waking up. The authority, mindset that people have, they think they've been beaten down their whole lives is what it is. They think they're not important enough or smart enough to make these decisions for themselves. So they listen to an authority and they don't realize that the authority is a wolf in sheep's clothing, so very difficult, very difficult. It takes a lot of discernment. Like I said, it has to be that person who makes a conscious decision, like, okay, I'm dying or my health is failing. I have to do something about it. What am I going to do? I don't want to go to a doctor and get on a statin. I don't want to go to a doctor and and take and get diabetes medication or whatever. I want to fix myself, and then that's where someone like me or someone who's extremely knowledgeable can put them on the right mindset, the right path, and help them understand that you don't want to deal with a doctor, you don't want to deal with pharmaceuticals, you don't want to listen to these experts. They're trying to harm you.
Yeah, very well said. Actually, I want to ask you the last question. Actually, no, let me change this. Before I ask you the last question, let
Sure.
me insert one extra one. So for carnivores who have been carnivores for a year, and they're coming across some issue, or maybe they find that carnivore is not working for them. I feel like I see this a lot on YouTube. Some people complaining, some carnivores complaining that it's not working for them. It could be oxalate dumping, later on, or it could be another issue. Maybe they're not being honest with themselves. Or what advice can you give them? Should they just stick with the carnivore, or maybe experiment?
No, like I said, the reason why we're carnivores is because we're carnivores, and that's all there is to it. We're not. Most people, the consumption of plants is going to cause more harm than good. So the last thing you want to do is go back to carbs, go back to plants. You know what I mean? Because if you had a problem before, that was probably the source of the problem. So why would you go back to it? But and like I said, it starts with the mindset that people have. If you have the mindset that you think that carnivore is just a diet hack or a tool, and I tried it out and it didn't work, there's a very good chance that it won't work. First and foremost, because you're addicted, and it might take over a year to get this to get that virus out of your mind. Your mind might subconsciously be like, I want sugar, I want some carbs, I want a donut, or I want some pasta, I want bread. Everybody loves bread. I want bread. So you have to. The capacities for people to lie to themselves is very, very powerful. People need to be very, very aware of that. They need to know that their blood panels are not going to be normal. And I put normal in quotes because the normative ranges on blood panels are based on a society that is, again, overwhelmingly metabolically diseased. It's just an average. So if you're some people, their HbA1c will go up. And why is my HbA1c going up? Oh my God, I'm pre-diabetic. Last time I had a blood test done, I was pre-diabetic. I think my HbA1c was 5.8. But what they don't test, this is, you have to have somebody who knows blood tests. What they don't test is your reticulocytes, which are new. I think it's called reticulocytes. They're new blood cells, new red blood cells that are formed in your blood marrow. If you have a high reticulocyte count and your HbA1c is high, that means you have a high glycation in your red blood cells and they're dying earlier because you have a lot of new red blood cells. But if your HbA1c is high and your new red blood cells, those reticulocytes, are low, that probably means that your red blood cells are living longer and accumulating more glycation in that HbA1c test. So there's a whole bunch of things. There's a whole bunch of nuances. They don't test fasting insulin, which would be a fantastic marker to know, because you could have very low fasting blood glucose. You could have very low HbA1c, and you're eating carbs, and then and you're not testing your fasting insulin. So it's kind of like it's really hot outside and your AC is working and it's nice and cool outside, but then your AC crashes, and then when your AC crashes from pumping out too much, that's your pancreas pumping out insulin. When your pancreas crashes and can't produce enough insulin to keep your sugar down, next thing you know, your sugar goes sky high, and your HbA1c goes up, and next thing you know, you're approaching diabetes. It happens very quickly. So you just have to know that it's not a hack. It's the way it's supposed to work, and if it's not working for you, there's usually a simple fix. If you know someone or can talk to someone who can say, okay, tell me what you're doing. because a lot of times they'll be drinking alcohol, a lot of times they'll be drinking energy drinks or pre-workouts. A lot of times they're doing things that are contraindicated, that are causing the problems that they're blaming the carnivore diet on. Or they might be eating hot sauce like I do, and hot sauce doesn't agree with them. They might be drinking coffee. They might be drinking coffee with a lot of mold in it. Coffee tends to have mold. The aflatoxins. I drink coffee sometimes. I make sure it's mold free. So some people might not realize that they might be having a mold reaction from the coffee that they're eating or drinking. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong. They could have a bad protein to fat macro ratio. They might not be eating enough fat. They might be eating too much protein. There's usually some troubleshooting that can be done with someone who can look at their big picture and see things that they didn't realize were going wrong. A lot of times it's blood panels. I've seen way too many people quit carnivore because their blood panel freaked them out. And I'm like, but he's like, and they're like, I feel great, but my blood panel. I'm like, why would you even get a blood panel if you feel great? And definitely, I get blood panels once a year because they're free, because they're covered with my insurance. But why would you look at your blood panel and freak out about it if you feel amazing? Like, I don't freak out about my blood panel. They were like, oh my God, you're not the A1C, what's that? All right. My LDL is high. Last time I got my LDL checked, it was 214. They're like, my clinician was calling me off the hook. I'm like, I don't want to answer the phone. I'm not going to have you freak me. You're not going to freak me out. There's nothing wrong with my LDL or my ApoB. The blood test before this one, my ApoB was super high, and they were like, "Oh my God, your ApoB." And I'm like, "There's nothing on my lipid panel that's going to cause heart disease. I'm not worried about it." But those people don't. If people don't understand that, they'll freak out. So if you're new to the carnivore space, or if things are going wrong, first of all, look to the plant-based sources. If you still have them, they might have to go, and then you might have to adjust your macro ratios. There's usually a pretty good fix, or you might just need to be patient. Because you might be 6 months into your healing, and you need a year and a half to heal. You're still going through it. The last thing you would ever want to do is trying to fix it with more plants. Plants are not going to fix you. Carbs are not going to fix you.
Yeah, I like everything you said. I feel like there's a lot of nuances, but it's also very helpful because there's a lot of things we can troubleshoot. And, at the same time, you can also just try to be patient. I actually like that part. Mm-hmm. Stephen, my last question for you is your future perspective in the community. How do you see carnivore evolving maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you see it being in a good light, in a bad, meaning, are we going to see more of this COVID censorship similar to that, or maybe a lot of pushback from the big pharma or the medical industry? At the same time, the good light, meaning we'll hear more people talk about it, more small podcasts like this, because they're hearing a lot of healing, their diseases. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the establishment is always going to keep pushing us into a state of fear, into a state of anxiety, because that's part of the trauma-based mind control paradigm that they operate under. I don't know if you've ever noticed, it's better off you just don't even watch the news. But if you turn on the news, it's just 100% fear. It's just a full frontal assault of fear and things that you should be afraid of, things you should be freaked out about. Like I said, I'm 52 years old. I lived through 9/11. And it seems like when 9/11 hit, they really turned up the volume on that. So it's just constant. It's constant diseases, constant outbreaks, constant terror, It's just constant. So they're going to keep. That's always going to keep. They're just going to keep doing that. And the thing that was disheartening about COVID was nobody said no, and all they had to do was say no, and it would have been over. But, people who had generations long businesses closed down and never opened back up again. They're like, what was I? And all they did about it was complain about it on Facebook. It's like, what am I supposed to do? And I'm like, you could have said no. If we had all said no, what are they going to do? They're going to arrest everybody? They're going to kick everybody's doors in and shutter their businesses? No. All we had to do was say no. All we had to do was have faith in each other, that we had each other's backs, and say no. And everybody just bent the knee, except for very few select people. who said no. But so at some point, things are not going to get better until that happens. That when the next psyop comes down, or whenever we have to do things to our detriment, it has to be a mass non-consent, mass non-compliance. It has to happen, or it'll never end. They'll just keep going and going and going until we're all gone. As far as COVID goes, not COVID, as carnivore goes, I always quote Gandhi. He said that first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. And I feel like we're in the you fight you, they fight you stage of that bouncing ball there, kind of. So I think it's very important. I would encourage everybody to not just go into the space with like your own anecdotal story about how it worked for you. I mean, if you have the time and the resources, get into the Carnivore Coach International certification that I got with Coach Pete and Ed Goki. Dr. Coach Stevens in there now, and Stephen Thomas. He does the bloods section. He's a phlebotomist, phenomenal. Watch his YouTube channel, learn everything you can. Just learn as much as you can, so we can go up against these Dr. Ids and Lane Norton type people who are just really, really trying to. They're really doing their best to discredit people from going towards carnivore. Like, so we have to be able. They have their certifications, they have their PhDs, and I'm a doctor, and they have a very frightening, authoritative presence about them, or intimidating, authoritative presence about them. We need people like Ed Goki and Bart Kay, perhaps not to a much lesser extent myself, who understand biochemistry, who understand physiology, who understand observational anthropology. We know why the carnivore diet is the most indicated, appropriate diet for the human species. We know why. We know what these carbohydrates and these refined grains and these plants are doing to us, doing to our brains, doing to our stature, doing to our overall health, our intelligence. We know all of these things. We need more people to know these things. We need more people who can articulate that and fight the fight, because we can win. The truth is on our side, obviously, but they've got the media, they've got the establishment. It is literally David versus Goliath at this point. So we need more people. We need more people who can make the intelligent, science-based arguments, and not just be like, oh, it worked for me. It's not enough for people. It's great. I'm glad it worked for you. But these science people don't want to hear anecdotes. That's like their biggest argument against carnivore. It's all just legions of people with anecdotes. And there's like this handful of people who can really stand up to them and tell them real science, tell them real human physiology, explain to people why calories don't matter, that kind of thing. You explain to people how your cells produce energy, that kind of thing, where the anecdotal stories don't really affect people in that way. So yeah, get educated if you can. Watch Bart Kay's videos, watch Eddie's videos, watch Coach Stevens' videos, Richard Smith, Anthony Chafee. Watch their videos. Low Carb Down Under has a lot of great presentations where you can learn about what the carbohydrates do to people. It's not necessarily all carnivore based, but you'll learn a lot about what the carbohydrates do to people physiologically, pathophysiologically. We need people who are intelligent voices in this field. So I think if we get more people doing that, and I think we have a lot of people are trying to say that carnivore is dying because a handful of influencers quit, but I think the movement's growing. Like they say, you can't stop the signal, So these people can throw out all these studies and a tsunami of useless literature that they want, and more of us are going to be like that's obvious. That wasn't true for me. Wasn't true for me. Wasn't true for me. Wasn't true for me. Millions and millions of people. maybe not millions and millions of people, but thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. That wasn't true for me. Like I'm in perfect health, and I've been eating meat for 20 years. And we're starting to get to that point where we have long-term carnivores like Anthony Chafee, like Bart K. I've been a carnivore for 3 years. You got Rancher Maggie. She's been a carnivore her whole life. Looks like she's in her 50s. She's 80s. She's in her 80s. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get more and more people like that, and it's going to be impossible to put down as long as they don't shut down the internet like they're trying to. That's another whole nother rabbit hole there. But yeah.
Yeah, very, very well said. I like that Gandhi quote reference. I feel like that is what's happening right now. I think it also happened during the COVID, and kind of like a timeless quote. Yeah. Steven, if people want to reach out or connect with you, what's the best place to get in touch with you?
Probably Instagram would be the best place. I'm very, 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 very close to shutting my Facebook down because I hate it. So Instagram and TikTok. So my Instagram, I believe my Instagram is Hyperion, HYPERION _carnivore, Hyperion Carnivore. And I believe my TikTok is Carnivore Invictus. Which was my Instagram moniker for a long time, but they just decided to kill my account for no given reason. So I keep confusing people with all my social media handles. But Hyperion Carnivore on IG and Carnivore Invictus on TikTok.
Awesome. I'm gonna make sure to post them all in the description so people can reach you. Steven, thank you again for joining me. Congrats on your coaching certification also. And I really enjoyed hearing your story, learning about your carnivore journey. I appreciate you taking the time to share. Thank you.
Very good talking to you. Thank you.